Now, the big moment has come. We're going to be dealing with the enterprise portion of the enterprise and SaaS financial model. Now, this is going to seem a little complicated because it is. I've spent a very large amount of time trying to make it simple, but fundamentally what you're doing isn't. If you've come through with me and follow the steps, you'll eventually get your head around it. You'll probably make a couple of mistakes as you go, but the more time you can spend with it, the easier it'll start getting. And at the end of it, you'll be an old hat and you'll know exactly what to do. But it will take a little bit of thinking. The main thing to understand is if something does make sense, something's gone wrong, it's because you haven't filled something in properly. And also don't get too fancy changing things around like, oh no, I noticed the header is spelt in the English version of the word, not the American version. So I'm going to change an S to a Z in the wrong place and suddenly things don't work. I mean, change things only if you know why you're going to do it, okay? Everything is set out really nicely and simply with big yellow boxes. So, you should know what to be filling in, but follow the steps, okay? So I'm going to take a little step back and explain to you how to think about this model. So I built this for a real fundraise. And, you're doing an enterprise company and, maybe you've got really long sales cycles and you're never quite sure what's going to come in when, but it's going to take time, right? Maybe you're going to have license revenue, maintenance and support, POCs with different revenue streams happening. It's a lot to think about, but this model does all the thinking for you. Now it's structured for a particular raise that I did in the logic that made sense for me. And this is the only enterprise model on the internet. So if it's not exactly perfect, well, I can fix it for you, or, you can put some time in and fix it yourself. But this is a bloody good place to fundamentally start with it. So there is a very particular logic to it, and it's because it was from a fundraiser that I did. Okay, just FYI. So I'm going to flip-flop between the sheets a little bit because it'll be a bit easier for you to kind of understand than if I just methodically go, line by line through this whole thing. So you're an enterprise company. You're going to sell to clients, maybe in different countries. You'll sell different projects with different sizes, with different fees. And so you're going to want to break this up into little pieces, right? And so let's just have a look at what this model looks like now. All right, this is where you can actually start putting things in, really, when you want to calculate how much money you're making. So we'll have different cases, and the stage rate thing we'll do later. You can have clients, Google, Facebook, Dropbox. Try and just group them up, okay? It's useful for some calculations. You'll sell them maybe in countries. This only matters for the graphs, by the way. It's not super important, the country. But fill it in just to be, methodical. Have some client types, which is useful for the graphs. And then you're going to start selling particular types of product. Then you're going to have maybe complications of how the work is going to be done. Is it going to be simple to do? Is it going to take a long time? And that's going to be important for thinking about your staffing and resources for these projects. And then you'll have small, medium, large size projects, which you'll charge different amounts for, right? So you could be selling a product 7, which might be simple or hard, and it could be small or large, and you'll charge different amounts for the same product. And then you're going to start at a certain date. Now, the calc start date is effectively when the sales guy actually starts talking to the client, okay? And so you will say, well, if I start on the 1st of April and the sales pitch takes 4 months to get to POC, the POC then will start in 4 months. But this is the start date for when the whole process will kick off. And so you could say, well, maybe I'm going to hire more people in the future. And so in December, that sales guy will start pitching whatever insurance company like Aviva. And then all the formulas basically map out the dates for when projects start and end. So you will see sales will close after April, so June is after April. Then your POC will start and end. You'll have development, a period, and then an implementation period maybe, and then maybe warranty. And you can sort of change these, but generally this is a decent way to structure it up. And then you can see that, well, for the purposes, we're going to get license paid at the first part, 20% we paid at implementation. second part of the license will be paid on a future date, which is, again, after, right? And then you can see it here. All the revenue is being mapped out on the specific date that the payments are happening. So first payment, second payment. First one, second one, because it looks like the period's shorter. And then we'll have recurring revenue over time. You see this every 12 months. The license is going to renew. That won't be the case for something like setup and customization, where you'll have payment periods, but you can see when the payments are made. And then they don't happen again, they don't recur. And then we have training, if you're doing that or not. Maybe you are, I don't know. Maintenance and support. POC revenue, I think, is last bit, yeah. So you can see where everything's mapped out. Now, when you're selling to big companies, you're not going to, get to Everest immediately. It's going to take you a bit of time to work through the organization, right? So this is the initial client sale. This is what you get them to do at the first time. So maybe Google in Hong Kong will start out with this kind of product, maybe a small one at the start, but then you want to upsell them and try and get into the organization or sell to new countries, sell new products. That'll happen in a future period of time, right? So assuming everything works out, you'll have an expansion phase of revenue. And so you can say here, Google, for the second product, is going to add one new country 3 months after the actual implementation is done. So management will kind of have a time and evaluate the product and think, oh, this is actually, really good. I wonder if Japan or whatever would like to do this too, at which point you expand and you add another client, and as well as the revenue stream that's coming from it. Then you could say in the second phase, 3 months or 1 month or 6 months after that phase of expansion happen, maybe you start plugging into 15 countries. And so this is where you really start pulling in a whole bunch of money. So I'll come back into this stuff, but hopefully you're starting to see kind of what's actually happening in here. But all this stuff needs to come from somewhere if you want to be structured. So you'll notice these are yellow, but also black. They're drop-down menus. That makes sure that everything is always structured exactly the same, so you can do things like pivot tables. Now, let's go into a little bit about how this is mapped. You're going to go into the enterprise. If you're going to start this now, this is follow exactly what I do, okay? Well, ignore this bit here. You're going to have potentially 3 kinds of implementation. So you can just use my words if you want. The way I thought about it was simple installation with some customization, or like a total custom development. So maybe you have something out of the box which just works. It's a simple installation. But what if you're selling some sort of database system which needs to be customized to the specific needs of that client? Well, maybe you need to customize that a little bit, or maybe you just need to do like full on, like a whole ton of work. But the product could be easier or harder for a different type of client. At which point you could set different types of timings to these sorts of implementations. So next thing you do is you're going to augment, if you want, how the timing schedule works. So sales closed is sales guy goes pitching, eventually closes the deal, whatever, 4 months later, hopefully. If you're doing POCs, the POC will start after the sales has been closed, and then we'll have the POC development will end. Because maybe it takes you a month or something to get it done for them, right? There'll be a period of POC testing where the client will then actually see, does this work for me or not? Before the decision maker will pull the trigger and say, do you know what? Yes, let's go for this. Then you're going to have to start developing the product for them, depending on how complicated the implementation is. And then the development will end. Then you'll start implementing it. And then the implementation will end. And then maybe you're going to have to offer a warranty period for them, which they might pay for. And maybe part of the payments on that warranty might be contingent on something or happen over time. So fundamentally, implementation ends is important, and the warranty is sort of optional. And then just because you can make nice little fancy charts and do segmentation, you can type in up to 10 different types of client. So whatever, insurance, bank, government, blah, 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 whatever suits for you. And then you obviously have a product line. I don't know what it's going to be, but you'll have potentially different kind of products. So, Google Maps, Street View, or, whatever it is, that AdWords, blah, 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 all your products. So stick the names of them here so that you know what you're flogging to the guy. And then you can stick whatever countries you're going to sell to. This is only really, again, relevant for making graphs and pivot tables. And now for project sizes, free, small, medium, large, very large. This is basically how much you're going to charge for those different types of products, depending on the implementation you're going to do for them. So whack these in, or leave them if you want. Probably leave these ones because they're a bit more tricksy. If once you kind of really play with the model and it just doesn't really work exactly the way you want it, sure, start playing with this stuff a bit, but maybe just leave it at the start. Definitely just whack in the type of clients you deal with, marketing, advertising, blah, blah. The names of your products, that's easy, right? And stick in the countries you're selling, and then you can probably leave the project sizes the same if you want. I'm going to come back to the rest of this in a minute. So these things all map now into here, okay? They also are going to map into this other sheet where you're going to map out the values that you put in for these. So let's get into this revenue assumptions sheet. I have explained all this in as much detail sort of as reasonable. So you can go through this and understand the length of how the sales cycles will work. And then go through this, and this is indicative of what your first project's payment scheme looks like. So you can see at what point is your license, your setup, customization, training, maintenance, POCs getting paid. So POC is 100% here. Then you get 20% when development ends and 80% of your license when implementation ends. All right, or maybe when warranty ends. But this will map out and hopefully help you, illustrate how this whole thing kind of works. Now, let's just plug in. So we are going to deal with your sales cycle now. So the reason why you had to fill in the revenue summary first is that you want to append values to these. So what you're going to want to do, the first thing is be like product one, product one, product one. And then, okay, now this is product two, right? So you fill all this stuff in with the products. And then you want to put on the permutations that you're going to have for each one. So you'll see product one here there's 6 product ones. Why? Because here we've got simple installations, small, medium, large, simple installation with custom work, small, medium, and large. If you have lots of different variables for these, then maybe you might have small, medium, large, very large, and have this sort of effectively 12 times. But you just basically want to map out every permutation variable for it. The next thing you want to do is, for every single one, map out the timings for them. I know this looks like a bit of a bore, but a lot of it will probably be the same. And maybe it's only the exceptions where you really want to spend a little bit more time thinking about it. Otherwise, just drag everything down and keep the numbers sort of similar. So sales closes, what is the sales cycle? Pitching takes 2 months. POC, how long does it take to do the POC work? It takes 3 months to build a POC for a client. How long will the client be doing testing for the POC? 2 months. After the POC has been done, you need to do development. How long is the development period? Then implementation. How long does it take to do the implementation for the client? 2 months. And then warranty after your implementation has been completed. Could be 2 months to a year. I don't know. It's up to you. And then here, this column shows you how long the total cycle is. So just map that out for all of them, and it'll end up being really long. And then these will then feed into the sheets as your templates. So if you pull up a product 6 implementation, which is large, the model will pull up all these values, okay? And that will basically ends up being your sales cycle. So those things, if we look at, say, the license, right, are what affect this. And there's this crazy complicated formula here, which will party rev assumptions and, depending on your cases, etc., take up the right dates. So this will happen for, everything. So these things will be driven off your revenue assumptions here. These will get pulled in, and they effectively stack up the dates. The model then looks at those dates and says, if that date is there and it matches the header, therefore pull out the value that you're looking for. Now we're going to talk about money. So You can see these are links up above. So they're just going to pull down. That's why you have to fill this in first. All right, do this exactly as I'm explaining it to you. This will pull out whatever it is. And so now for each one, for a small product one installation, you charge 100K. For a medium one, you charge a license of 150. For a large, you charge 200,000 a year for it. It costs about 233,000 for setup and customization. Training is 25K. Maintenance support is 150. If you don't do maintenance and support or something, just put 0. That tells you the total revenue and your bookings, which is how you define it. So bookings years, which is a defined name somewhere. Next, you have POC revenue maybe. So if you charge a POCs, whack that in. I recommend setting up POCs. Now we have this case 3 thing, which is if you are approaching sort of a more aggressive pricing model. So you say, I'm going to charge on the value that I create for you. And so if I save you $2 million a year, I'm going to take 40% of that. So I'm going to charge $800,000 a year, which is a lot of money, right? It's a lot more than, say, the $200,000 license you would have here. So you could say, for example, as a percentage of sales approach, if you can get away with it, clients, maybe you would charge $800,000. And this is something that I was trying to sell to the VCs, that we had this potential to dramatically make a shit ton load more money. Now, if you don't care about like a value-based pricing approach, just put in zeros and forget case 3 ever exists, because it's not the simplest thing to immediately like get in your head, okay? Next, we go down, and you're going to set up when you're getting paid for each stream of revenue. So if you have a license one, you can get the drop-down menus, right? You're going to get paid how much at what date. So when the sales closed or development ends, you get 20% of your license revenue, 80% when the implementation ends. So just whack in the percentages. These need to add up to 100%, right? If they don't, there'll be an error formula saying it's not 100%. Now, for setup and customization, sorry, I'm really itchy. We at least had a lot more periods at which you would be paid in installments for the setup and customization. So whack those in, same approach. Same thing for training. Typically it happens at one point. Maintenance and support could be, a couple of times. You can do whatever you want for this. Then for POC, typically happens at one point. It's just, when sales closes or something. And then that's it. So that's all the mapping. It's really not that complicated once you understand how this whole sales cycle thing kind of works. And hopefully I've been able to make it relatively simple. So whack in when you're getting paid, how much you're getting paid, and what the sales cycle is for what those dates of payment might be. All right. Now, what do we do next? Okay, so now you did the groundwork, right? And now you want to actually fill in and figure out when you're going to be making money. So be thinking about what clients am I going to pitch? How much will I be making now? How much will I make in the future? And maybe do this on pen and paper and just get an idea before you actually start doing this. Up to you. We'll come back to the cases here in a sec, but just say for Google, you type in whatever. My client is Google. My client is Facebook. And I'm going to sell them lots of products. So just drag it down, whatever country it's going to be. These drop downs, again, they come from here. Then what product you're going to sell them. Maybe you've already started the start of the sales processes with them, in which case you can put this at the date when you started. And so to start the date when the sales is actually going to happen for all the for the sales guys, and the whole process will start. So if you know your sales cycle is 13 months, then 13 months from here is when effectively the whole thing is over and you've got all the revenue in your bank account. And then all the calculations are just done for you. So you can whack in as many or as few clients as you want to have, add them over time. And then, if you want to start thinking about making expansion revenue for them, you put in like how many new countries or new products, whatever, like countries you're going to sell for here. What is the gap kind of going to be? It's going to be 6 months. It could be 2 years, maybe. And then you'll just make more money, expansion revenue. And then the the third phase, or the second phase, effectively, or expansion phase. So yeah, hopefully you understand this now. Why don't we deal with cases and the stage weighting, right? There's 3 cases you have here, 1, 2, 3, and you can do this thing called stage weighting, yes or no. So the 3 cases that I put in there is your current pipeline alone. So this makes assumption that you're not going to do any more sales, and it's just what you currently have in your current sales pipeline. So no pipe dreams. Then you're going to have a standard forecast and the percentage of sales approach. The standard forecast is basically what your forecasts are, and the percentage of sales approach is the same as your standard forecast, but with the percentage of sales or the value that you're contributing. Remember, we talked about that here. You see, that number is bigger than this number. So that is like your punchy, we could potentially make lots of money kind of sales pitch. I tried selling it. You can, but it's a little bit like, have you sold it to anyone yet? No, but people have said good things about it. So those are the 3 ones you can do. So you can use that to basically see how much money you'll make in these different scenarios. Or if an investor says, do you know what, I don't believe in your forecast, just tell me what's in your current pipeline. And show me that P&L. You can do that. Now, the next thing is the stage weight, yes or do not have stage weight. Okay, so the stage weighting is where you probability adjust the likelihood of you closing these deals. So one approach is if you're using something like Pipedrive or Salesforce, where for your own purposes you'd say talk to a client is 5% of success. Signed contract is 100%. Waiting to sign contract is 80%. So you can actually append to those cases, 1, 2, and 3, the likelihood of you actually getting that revenue. And so, if you're maybe going to try and do some sales for this, you could say the probability is really freaking low. Or you could say maybe it's high, and then they'll take a percentage of that. The reason I came up with this was we had a very aggressive pipeline and the VCs were calling bullshit. So I used this as a way to show them different scenarios and that I'd actually thought about this and tried to actually add credibility to the projections that I had. Once you start getting into this, you'll start coming up with their own tricksy ways of wanting to to explain things to people. And this will start actually making sense. It's probably a little bit too much for you to get your head around with all at one time. But once you start playing around with it and see how the cases work, you'll think actually it's pretty cool. And you can kind of, create different presentations. The people who are going to be using this model or, building businesses like this are obviously not stupid. You're going to have to be a bit financially savvy. So this will be pretty cool once you really start getting into it. But I know it's going to be a bit hard at the start. So to actually do that, you go into the revenue forecast sheet here. And again, there's drop-down menus to make sure you don't do anything silly. 1, 2, 3. If you put case 0 in, it means you're not making any revenue, okay? And so you'll see that I've repeated this because you want to apply these to different cases. And so when you flick the switch on this, the model is going to look for 1, 2, and 3 and add up those values for each line, okay? So read this note, and it'll give you a little bit more guidance on that. So just pick 1, 2, 3, then repeat things. So you could say here, Google, this is my current pipeline. I actually believe this is pretty much likely to do. We're already doing POCs, we're already doing development. This is pretty much going to happen. And then your case 2 could be your optimism. We hope to maybe sell this to whatever, Google in Japan. And then you could repeat this sort of the same. And the case 3 could be, do you know what? What if these, or maybe even these, if you can resell, were priced as a percentage of sale or value base, right? So that could be, showing the difference between the 2 and the 3 case and showing like, do you know what? Here's what we're currently going to do. This is just going to be on the normal revenue. Here's what we're hoping to kind of do. But if we do this like this, that's pretty sexy, right? And then here, the stage weighting. That's based on the exact stage of your deal and probability adjusting it. So if you flick this button, 1 to 2, right? You can stage weight the numbers and all the numbers will start getting smaller basically. So yeah, you see 50% because we're at a certain stage, or 70, but it's dependent on what you do in your sales at your company. And then you just repeat this for each one, 1, 2, 3. I mean, maybe you have 5 of these or something. It all just is going to depend on what you're doing. So this is what it's really in the pipeline. You really do believe it's going to happen. Here is what you're kind of hoping in future. And here is the 3s are the stage weighting version of the 2s. And then you just repeat these for each one. And then you can play with the scenarios and see what the outcome is. 2 more things to show on this sheet now. How do you define bookings, right? So if maybe you define bookings as 3 times your license revenue, which is what I do, okay? You'll bill it for a year, so your revenue will basically be the same as your billings, but you can book that you're going to get whatever 3 times that. So how long on average are you signing your contracts for? If it's 3 years, put in 3. If it's 1 year, you can whack in 1. Just understand that I assume that these clients basically don't churn out. So if they do a contract with you, I just assume that license revenue is going to repeat. So we got some calculations and summaries here to show you what's actually going on in the business. Make some adjustments to add in your clients. And here, you're going to want to add in, if you want, and it's something about your current revenue. So in your P&L actual, you'll begin filling in what you're actually having. And if you remember to one of the first videos, it will say recurring license from prior period, right? This number is coming from your actuals. This is going to come in and it's going to repeat because this is your license revenue that's going to repeat. So you see it repeats. Now I have these yellow boxes here, just in the odd case that you want to fiddle around with it. And if you want to fiddle around with it, you'll have found out a reason. So I'm not going to bore you with kind of explaining this. This is just the real edge case. We put in your actuals here, just I state it, okay, for the number of clients you have, and this will feed into the model. So for presentation, you can just see how everything is tracking over. Now, let's look at the summary, what this looks like. You got recurring license from your prior period, the recurring stuff, your license, and then the other streams, and then your total. So you can see you're doing 13,770,000 in the first year. We calculate your billings, then we'll see what your bookings look like. Then you see your clients. So remember this bit, number of clients adds in, so we can see how that is progressing over time. It looks like because of your sales cycle, it takes a long time before you actually start closing any clients. So we can see what's happening with your billings. At what point is the money coming in? So initial sale, you're going to bill this amount. Then the next expansion, the second expansion, and then this is the total of all those 3 phases, right? This is hopefully happening. This is hopefully you expand, and this is hopefully you expand a lot sometime in the future. You can add in your billings from your actuals, and then we can see what your total billings are, and then what percentage everything is coming from. And then we'll see what your bookings forecasts are, basically exactly the same thing, and what percentage of your revenue is coming from license revenue, because that's something investors care about. And then below we've got calculations for how all that stuff was calculated by looking at where your clients are. So I explained all this before already. Enterprise revenue forecast. Anything else to explain? Okay, well, we can see at the summary up here. Your revenue is coming from how many projects, from what sources, what percentages are revenue, phase 1, phase 2 of expansion. And then similar stuff we saw on the last sheet, your billings, your bookings. And I put this here basically so you can, be putting in your assumptions and then be fiddling around and figuring out what's happening here. Okay, so I think that all sort of makes sense now. Once you start playing with this, actually, it won't look quite as scary as it is. You just need me to kind of explain a little bit and then just go and play and see what happens to the numbers. And, you'll just keep on picking it up as you go, right? But just be very methodical about filling it in progressively like I just told you to do. Okay, let's see what else we have here. Okay, cool. So we have now enterprise staff tech sheet. So do you remember when we were doing the staff, the sales staff and the support staff, we had automated the calculations? Well, when I was doing this fundraising, I was thinking, do you know what? Crap. they're really going to actually need to hire a lot of people, assuming they actually can hit their projections. So I wonder how many people the developers are actually going to need to hire for a planning process. So I was like, actually, I could do some math based on when I think these projects are actually going to close, and then do resource planning for it. So this is actually like an operational thing that I built, but ends up actually just being useful for you to do your fundraising operational model. And the approach is, we see how many projects there are. I don't get into too much detail about the size of the projects, just there are projects. And then, you should have some experience and know how many people, how many developers you need to execute on, depending on the number of projects. So you could say, well, I know that basically project manager can manage, 20 projects at once. So they need to commit like 5% of the time to, managing a project. Whereas software engineers are super involved. They can only work on maybe 2 projects. So they would have to allocate 40% of their time to a project. And so what you would do is, sorry, I think I'm having an allergic reaction in my nose. It's driving me bonkers. Just trying to get these videos done for you. You would take, how many projects do we have? Multiply them by, or you sort of divide them by the percentage allocation people would have, and then actually just figure out how many staff you need to have. So we have how many people you need, make a deduction for how many people you already have, right? So if you go into the staff sheet, map out who the people you already hire, okay? Enterprise category, right? Map them, people you have. You can do this mapping here that drives this, okay? And label everyone. So first thing you do is put in all the titles that you're going to need to have to automate the forecast over here. And then map the existing people that you have that you'd want to make a deduction for to illustrate your existing capacity. So you would make the deduction for the current number of staff, and then this will basically see how many people you need depending on the requirements, the number of projects. And I assume that you don't fire people, okay? So once you hire people, if there's suddenly a lull in the number of projects, those people continue. You don't flex up and down and suddenly keep firing and hiring people every project, right? Then this crazy stuff basically will show you when the projects are actually happening in terms of timing, right? For the implementation, for the POCs or development work. Here is the actual schedule of projects and how many people you'll be needing to have for them, okay? And then you can see it adds up and tells you when you're going to be needing to execute and stuff. And so ultimately you can see here what people you're going to be needing for projects. So have a play. It's not like super complicated, but it'll map out what you need. And this stuff then just feeds into your staff sheet. And these are all then calculated. And it links down here. All right, so this links to the enterprise staff tech sheet. So there you go. That's the tech sheet. Read the guide. It'll sort of explain it a bit too. Have a play, look at the summaries of how things happen, and you'll start getting it as you play. Just make sure you map all this out right. Is there anything else I've missed? Assumptions, so the whole calculations you need to touch. Finally, we've got the graphs. These are just illustrative to you, okay? I actually use these for myself when I was writing the pitch deck. It's just formatted pretty and shit for you here, but the reality is just make it a bit messy so it's actually easy to use. Maybe want to, ungroup the thing. Ungroup if you want to start playing around the sizes, because if you end up with like 200 different types of client, this thing will start looking really weird. So just fix it for yourself as you go. These are all just indicative, all right? So you can see it over the 5-year period of when the money's coming in. If things get weird or things are not rendering right, these are pivot tables, okay? So there's like all this data set here so that you can make this a pivot table so you can basically see when the stuff is going to happen for you. So this pulls out, right? So you want to check the row labels here. And if you don't want the 0 thing here or something, you can unclick it. Or if you're missing, like, okay, so like client, why is that there? You can do that, and then client is gone. Now, the reason why I have it set to all, right, is because you probably wouldn't notice it otherwise. So once you notice there's something there that you don't like, you can remove it. If I set them to just the example, once you put in your own client names, these will become meaningless and it becomes there's nothing there. And if you're not really good at Excel, you wouldn't actually notice that. So these are just, summations depending on these things here. You can, play around if you want. I sort of made what I think are the smartest charts on the basis of the data here. But there's a big data set for you to do pivot tables here anyway, if you want to, okay? But just remember, check the row labels in case something goes wrong. The other thing is, if you want to start doing the cases, all right, for case 1, you can see what the money is, okay? And then if you want to change that, go to case 2, right? And then the chart will show you what the case 2 is. And so that's how you can then present. If you do it, really pay attention to detail. I can honestly tell you more than one time I fucked up and just didn't click the right cases for one time I wanted to show it. And I ended up, spending so much time updating the stupid PowerPoint presentation and then having to redo all the stupid charts because I didn't put the cases in. So if you're going to start changing this for each of the cases, right, which you should do, just pay attention to detail. Make sure you've done it right, okay? Anything else? So cases, we've got the labels, so change them for all of them depending. Yeah, anyway, there's a chart, so I'm sure you can figure it out. So there we go. It's not as bad as you might think from when you first looked at it. If you just be really methodical, if you don't change anything you don't want to change, you can get it done fairly rapidly. You just need to know, what you want and what your goals are, right? So, filling out this stuff, I mean, if you know your business, how freaking hard is it to list your products? I mean, it's simple, right? If you're not messing around with this stuff, nothing to do. You got cases, well, okay, we can play with them, but okay, fine. That's going to take you 30 seconds. Just make a call. Maybe this is really easy for you. Maybe it's not. I mean, then it's just, monkey work. You fill it in, you be methodical, plan it out. If you know what these are, you know what they are. Or you just put in some random numbers and see if it looks good or not, and then tweak it. What is going to be a bit of a pain, just because you need to figure it out, is plotting this out. And not because the Excel is hard, but you just need to put in the thought, right? Or what are the cases? What are maybe the weightings for it? Maybe you haven't done that before. Maybe you think, oh shit, Alex, that's a good idea. I should do that too. And so you have to end up playing that data. And this can be like pulling freaking teeth from your sales guys if they are not updating Pipedrive and stuff properly. And I promise you, there was so much shit with the sales guys, messing around and not putting the numbers in, and then end up telling investors wrong things. It's a real pain in the bum. So just be like, guys, I need Pipedrive installed, updated properly. I'm putting the numbers in, and then map things out, and it's okay. So it's not, again, the Excel isn't that hard. It's you understanding your business, which is kind of the annoying bit. I mean, you can try and make it a little bit simpler by not breaking out products or not doing expansion phases, by not doing cases. But, if you like numbers and you're really good, want to do proper planning, this tool is pretty freaking awesome. I mean, you can actually properly, figure out what your hiring requirements are going to be for your staff. So if you're going to be growing aggressively, this shit is actually useful, right? So do it properly, and this model can actually be operational for you. So just be realistic about it. Read the guides. I tried my best to explain how everything works. There's invariably notes to help you figure out what's going on too. Theory and reality. I'm sure you might struggle a little bit with it. If there's something big you don't understand, feel free to ping me. Just be methodical, fill things in right, and you'll get it. Okay. So the next video, we're going to be dealing with the marketing sheets as well as the channel sales. Okay, which I guess is part of marketing too. So maybe you want to chill out on the whole marketing bit and maybe stick with this enterprise thing. Maybe watch this video again. And then, best of luck, guys.